I recently was able to scale this e-commerce brand right here to over $66,000 in just a period of 30 days. That's roughly $2,200 every single day. And in this video, we're gonna be dissecting this success and understanding how it happened so that you can do the same for your own e-commerce brand. Let's take a step back and understand this brand. Now, in the last 30 days in total, this brand has done roughly $280,000 in revenue. And you see this big upward spike simply because there was a massive anniversary sale this brand hosted, and they used it very well to their advantage. They sent out a massive email list, they ran a massive Facebook ad campaign, and we also did a lot of things with Google ads, which I'll be going over, which resulted in this massive $60,000 day in sale. And that is one of the major reasons why the revenue spiked up to over 100% compared to the previous month. Now, if we kind of look at the month of May as a whole, revenue was still decent, $142,000, but nowhere close to what it did in the last 30 days. Now, going on over to Google Ads, we've been running this Google Ads account actually since last October of 2022, but there's something very interesting that happened in between which caused this brand to stop working with us. And this brand is, by the way, under my Google Ads agency or marketing. But in this last 30-day period, we have been able to run Google Ads campaigns at an 8.67x ROAS and generate roughly $66,000 in revenue after spending about $7,000. How is this even possible? The best way to classify this e-commerce brand would be as a streetwear jewelry brand. And what I mean by that is just streetwear accessories for younger audience members, such as these maybe chains right here, or maybe some kinds of necklaces, rings, so on and so forth. Just everyday wear for a young individual. And these are some of the brands which we were directly in competition with, which are, by the way, very big and six-figure brands. But let's start off by analyzing the landing page. And obviously for security reasons, I cannot go over the exact store that we are working with here, but I will go over these two specific examples, which basically our store is very similar to. The first store is the gldshop.com. If we go on over to the website, this landing page, you can say that this is curated for that perfect user who is young and who likes these kinds of accessories. If we start by looking at the top, we can see the colors, they're in a certain style, black and yellow. And this is done again, keeping the user in mind. The dark overall kind of atmosphere and the dark theme is because a person that is within this niche would prefer these colors. That's not all, because now when we look at the actual layout of the overall product page itself, we can see that first of all, there's a bunch of reviews coming up at the top. There's a price along with a shop pay, which by the way, our brand also follows. And then this is one of the most important things which our brand has, and it's just talking about when your product ships. Nowadays, people hate waiting. And if you can let them know that it's going to ship immediately on today or on a certain day, this is going to either make the person want to buy from you or not make the person want to buy from you. And surprisingly, this will also lower your dispute rates and chargeback rates down the line because they already knew when it was going to ship and potentially when it was going to be delivered. But besides, that's very normal layout for the description. There's the product details, which our brand also has, followed by the specifications, material, exchange, returns, reviews. And if we scroll down, there's some upsells for different kinds of streetwear jewelry as well. And then at the bottom, there's a longer description, which is very uniquely laid out, which by the way, our website also follows. But if we read through this, we can see it's talking more about the experience, where it's designed, all of that stuff, which is what gives these kinds of products the pricing that they sell at. So this kind of chain, you could either buy it from like Walmart or Target for $20, or you could spend $83 buying it from a store like this. And this is only gonna happen if there's a story behind it, if there's colorful imagery, if there's certain personalities behind it, which this brand as well as our brand got right. This second example right here of just a basic layout on the right with trust badges, our brand also had a trust badge. The last example I went over, there were no trust badges, but these, if you have them custom made, if you don't just have 3 generic ones you get from Google Images, then these can be very impactful for your conversion rates. Similar kind of layout for the size guides and all of these little mini FAQs. And then when you scroll down, there's the upsells, followed by the reviews. Very basic setup. There was nothing too crazy going on in terms of the landing pages, but if we now move on to kind of the ad strategy, and as I mentioned, we actually began working with this account again on the 15th of May. We actually had stopped working in February with this ad account and with this brand because they wanted to go a cheaper route. They wanted to save money and see if another agency who's cheaper could do the same tricks. And unfortunately, that was a very bad decision for them, which is why they ended up coming back to us, and now we're working together for good. But basically, since May 15th, we stopped whatever strategies the old agency was doing and we started again. But kind of going back to what was working in the beginning, essentially the main reason why we even began working with this brand is because a lot of the traffic that was coming through, it was only coming through the brand search campaigns or any types of other retargeting campaigns the brand had going on. There was very little activity going on with cold traffic, and obviously that was really not a good thing for the e-commerce store owner because they wanted more cold traffic coming in. They did not just want to rely on branded search campaigns, which, by the way, even to this day, there's a lot of influence from brand search campaigns. However, now cold traffic campaigns like these ones are starting to really pull up and really go above and beyond in terms of getting new customers, getting revenue, etc. But the kind of strategy which we implemented again when we began working with this brand, it's a fairly simple layout. We started with a Performance Max campaign. This was basically the 1-2-1 launch strategy, which is one shopping campaign, in this case Performance Max, two search campaigns, so one branded search and then one cold traffic search campaign, and then one display, discovery, or YouTube campaign. That was just based on our approach and what we thought was the best. But the reason why we only started with one PMax campaign here again is because there's, first of all, not a lot of different SKUs within this brand. All of these products are interlinked with each other. They're very similar to each other. They have the same kind of user and the same kind of target, as well as the same kind of price point. So we kept things fairly simple. We just started with one PMax campaign, and all we did is we started the budget at a fairly high budget for this brand of $170 a day. In terms of the actual setup of the PMax campaign, we did decide to launch two different asset groups, one with a bunch of different images and a bunch of different audience signals, and the other one, well, with nothing at all. And we wanted to do this to kind of test what would be the appropriate strategy for this brand moving forward. And just during this time period, we can see both of the results being extremely different from each other. So if we go ahead and add certain columns in, we can see the asset group 1, which was with the different assets with the different kinds of signals, was performing the best compared to the shopping only asset, which is basically no kinds of assets, no audience signals, none of that stuff. We wanted to kind of do this A/B testing within this PMax campaign directly and just kind of focus on what is bringing in majority of the sales. But because of that, we did not want to just diversify too much into multiple different PMax campaigns. For the search campaigns, we did the usual, launching one dynamic search campaign, which, by the way, right now is doing fairly well compared to how it used to do previously. We also launched that branded search campaign, which obviously is still one of the biggest levers within this e-commerce brand, but unfortunately sometimes there's just no way around it, and launching and running a branded search campaign can actually be very beneficial because this is a lot of data this campaign is feeding to this ad account, and that is beneficial because then this ad account can go into these other campaigns like this cold traffic PMax campaign or this other dynamic search campaign, and it can actually let these campaigns understand who the main user is, who the main customer is, based on results from this first campaign right here. That's why a branded search campaign is a must-have for your brand. But basically, along with that, we also had another display campaign running, which we unfortunately had to shut off because it was really not getting any types of decent results. But it's been over a month now since we have been running this ad strategy, and it has been consistently doing fairly well. I mean, the overall conversion value has in fact increased within the last few weeks, really, and this is kind of directly bringing us into the scaling phase. Now, unlike a lot of the other case studies I've done, in most of them, I would start off with the foundation, meaning the product feed, the product image. But for this brand, because we had already fixed up the foundation when we initially began work, that was already pretty good to go. It was not needed. So what we did instead is first, we found the strategies again in terms of campaigns which were working. And then once things started to work really well, that's when we went into the back end and we started further fixing up the products. Now, what we did is fairly simple because we noticed a lot of these product images were not the best because the CTRs were fairly low, and because of that, the CPCs were fairly high. So to kind of keep this very profitable, to kind of keep the results from cold traffic coming in at a great scale, we went in and we started changing up the product images. And this actually led to some of them even getting disapproved because Google started to think that there was text on these images, even though there was no kind of text. So what you will notice when you're doing things like these is there might suddenly start to be additional disapprovals coming all of a sudden. That is expected. All you can really do is just kind of either revert back to the original change or continue trying different images, continue trying different product titles until Google gets rid of those disapprovals and those suspensions. Because as you can see, our changes started to bring in a few more disapprovals, which was expected. In addition to that, we started focusing on these products, which were, as I like to call, problematic children, because these specific products, even though they were not disapproved, they still had some kinds of issues, and as a result, they were bringing down the entire campaign and the entire account quality score. So we also started to work with them. We started improving the product SEO techniques, and those ended up doing majority of the scaling here, because if we look in the last 30 days alone with Google Ads, we can see that the overall conversion value right here is 46% in increase. The ROAS is 34% more than what it used to be previously. And in the last 14 days, we can see that things have been fairly consistent in terms of revenue. In fact, it has gone up another 78%, while the ROAS has only slightly dipped to a 9%. But keep in mind, the break even for this brand is around a 4x. So we're well above the break even ROAS numbers. We're very profitable with Google Ads, which is what is kind of expected. But this ultimately brings us into the long-term scale of the brand and what kind of the next steps are. So the next steps obviously for this brand should be to continue doing what's working. That means number one, continuing those feed optimizations, because even here, for example, there are still some ads which are getting limited due to some kinds of policies which need to be fixed, and focusing on the product feed a bit more, improving that will ultimately also help get rid of these disapprovals, these limitations as well. But in addition, launching more campaign types. You want to be expanding onto display campaigns, discovery, YouTube, using everything Google provides to provide a holistic approach so that you don't just rely on one campaign type or another. But the third and most important thing we will be doing is continuing to scale this budget all the way up to $600 a day, $1,000 a day and more, because prior to Q3 and Q4, we need to have everything established. We need to have the algorithm in place and running properly so that we can scale very aggressively come Q4. But again, this was an e-commerce brand under my Google Ads agency, Your Marketing, which if you're currently doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your brand to the next level. Go to my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.